and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Tourism and its related services is one of the biggest sectors for employment, making up just under a quarter of all jobs in Malaysia. But it is also one of the industries worst hit by the pandemic and will likely take many years to recover fully. What is the plan in the meantime? We have two guests from Langkawi joining us on the show tonight. Langkawi and Sabah are two economies most dependent on tourism for jobs and revenue. Joining us on the show, we have Hezri Adnan, the CEO of the Langkawi Development Authority, which is a government agency responsible for stimulating key sectors in Langkawi. And also Hussein who is a long-time player in the tourism industry in Langkawi. He runs pulaulangkawi.my, which is a platform for tourist activities in Langkawi. And he's also he runs one of the biggest jet ski operators in Asia. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. It's good to have you both here.
Thank you.
Now, I wanted, so now that the economy is opened up a little bit, the fact that domestic tourism has been allowed, have you both seen a recovery in the tourism of Langkawi? Hezri, are you encouraged by the signs that you're seeing?
Well, if you talk to the most of the business operators, they would talk to you with a big smile in the past couple of weeks because during the lockdown, it's totally shut down when it comes to business operation. So now we're seeing tourists back into the island, and in some of the facilities, they beginning to see even some hotels are full house. So it's good as far as we are comparing it with the past couple of months. Right. But if you compare with last year, we're still far off from what we're supposed to do.
What about you, Hussein? Do you have a big smile on your face, as Hezri said?
I mean, it would be nice to have a big smile right now, but unfortunately, the figures we're seeing are really far from what we did last year. The objective right now is not to make money, it's just simply to reduce our losses. Okay, so basically that's all we're trying to do right now, reduce losses.
Right, that's a very interesting point. And what has been lost in the intervening months, the MCO months? Hezri, in terms of jobs, were businesses able to hold on to their workers? Do you see an influx of workers out of things? What about locals, and what were their strategies to kind of survive the MCO months?
Well, the tourism, the dependency on tourism is about 70%. So every year we get around 1.7 billion ringgit tourism receipt, and this flows into the F&Bs, into the transportation, hotels, accommodation and all that, travel and tours. So the whole island was basically dependent on tourism. But of course there are pockets of vulnerable groups. Yeah, for instance the penjaja and the operates pasar malam and all the operators of pasar malam. They have been badly affected. The travel and tour operators, which numbered around 130 before the lockdown, now they're down to about 50. Right. And some of them run out of cash, so they cannot re-register their business, for instance. So we're seeing different strategies and coping strategies by the different groups dependent on tourism.
Okay, I do want to come back and touch on that dependency on tourism and whether we need to rethink that. But I want to ask, from a tourism service provider perspective, how did you manage? Did you have to let go a lot of staff in terms of job losses? You said trying to stem the losses, right? Trying to reduce losses. Were the losses very bad?
Okay, let's put it this way. I mean, for that 3 months, we had absolutely zero income. Our overheads were still there, despite the moratorium. We still had a lot of overheads which we needed to cover. Okay. In terms of workforce, yes, we did have to lay off. I would say maybe half of the workforce. Okay, we just had no choice. We had to do it.
Yeah. I wonder about that because one of the things, of course, is people don't recognize that there are skills that are specific to the industry and they're built up over time. A great waiter is in fact a great waiter because of a lot of training and also a lot of experience. And so that has the loss of good people been one of the things that you see happening, Hezri, in Langkawi? And how will you build that human capital back?
I think once we bring back the numbers to Langkawi, even though it's not as as to the level at what it was before the lockdown, I think this is where people will start to come in. For instance, the tourist guides. Yeah? We had about 200 licensed tourist guides operating on the island before the lockdown. Some of them have fled the island because there's basically nothing to do, so it's better to be with your family. But once the business starts operating again, once the border is open, they will easily come back. But with the waiters, with the other players in the industry, I think it will be case by case. And
what's your timeline for recovery? What are you thinking of in terms of when? Because you said dependent on when the borders open up. What's your timeline for recovery?
Well, that's a $1 million question now, right? Because if you look at this dependency on the domestic tourism, I think, okay, before that, maybe I should say that people coming to Langkawi, the foreign tourists would number around 50%, and the domestic would be 50%.
Okay, half and half.
Half and half. So, with the border closed, 50% of them are gone, right, basically. And people like Hussein, who's dependent on, foreign tourists, badly affected, but of course he has different strategies now. So it varies really,
Hussein, what are you thinking about in terms of timeline for recovery?
Okay, realistically, we're looking at about 18 months to get back to 50% capacity.
18 months to 50% capacity.
Yeah.
Hezri, is that what you think as well? I mean, we're talking as if COVID-19 has been cured. I mean, we're not in a post-COVID situation, right?
We're still
in the midst of a pandemic. Yeah. The expectation is there might be a second wave. We don't know how the rest of the world is going to react. I mean, is there any way to hedge against all this uncertainty? And can an agency like LADA that you run actually provide any kind of help and assistance for those businesses?
Look, whatever we're experiencing now is not being experienced by anyone on this planet before, So this is really novel, and nobody can say with full certainty, okay, this is the way it's going to be in the next 1 year or 2 years. Hence my reluctance to see, when we're going to recover fully. Because up till June, we are only about 890,000 visitors. We were supposed to get around 2 million, by June, but it's not even half. So it's a difficult situation, I think, to
Very quickly, before we go to break, I wanted to ask Hussein, Hezri alluded to this strategy that you're pivoting to. Can you tell us, targeting domestic tourists, of course?
Okay. Targeting domestic tourism right now is all about increasing the spending per capita. Okay, because previously we thought that the locals, Malaysians, would not spend that much. After we had the pandemic, we realized, hey, Malaysians do have the money to spend. We just need a different strategy to approach them. So right now, we are using different ways to actually trying to get all these people to come to Langkawi.
Well, in fact, one of the good things is that they no longer can go to the Gold Coast or London or New York. And so they have to spend their money somewhere.
Yes.
If you're lucky, they're going to be spending it with you.
Yes,
okay.
most definitely.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but after this, let's continue this conversation with Hezri and Hussein on Consider This. Stay tuned. Hi, if you've just joined us, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. Joining us in the studio tonight, we have Hezri Adnan, the CEO of LADA, which is the Langkawi Development Authority, and also Langkawi tourism player, long-time Langkawi tourism player, Hussein Mohammed Syed. Hezri, if I could come back to something you said a bit earlier before the break. You said 70% of Langkawi's economy is dependent on tourism and tourism-related services. Now that this has happened, should Langkawi rethink that dependence? Can Langkawi wean itself off this dependency?
Well, we have to think about diversifying the economic base. I think that sets the way forward. In fact, on the 31st May, we launched our recovery plan, economic recovery plan, which is based on 3 principles. One is safe tourism or safe travel. And number 2 is diversifying the economic base. And thirdly, local identity and sustainability. So we have about 10 strategies and 30 draft actions. that we are, we're having a discussion with the different stakeholders. So yes, we have to rethink, our dependency model.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would that, how would you take the first steps? It's not going to be overnight, but you have to take those first steps.
Our first focus would be on agriculture. I mean, because Langkawi was an agricultural economy before tourism took over. So I think the base is still there. And we've already started with a number of actions, which we are targeting the most vulnerable groups like the single moms, the hawkers, the night pasar malam operators, and all that. And we're trying to give them quick cash. For instance, we have a mushroom project. One mushroom house can give about 2,500 of income for the family or the individuals involved. And we're going to replicate this in a larger scale for people who've lost their income. So mushroom, vegetables, so this would be our first rush into this.
Hussein, I mean, for somebody who runs jet skis, I think barnacles might be a bigger problem than mushrooms for you. But I want to ask you, when you speak to your colleagues, I mean, other businessmen, do they say it's time to quit? That there's something so uncertain about the future that it's time to quit and move into something else, maybe leave the island? Is that that kind of feeling among your colleagues?
Yeah, there have been talks about some people trying to diversify to doing something else. But everybody's soul is actually into tourism. I don't think they want to do anything else because, in essence, tourism is just so much fun, and yeah, you just want to do it. We're just waiting for things to get better, and hopefully we can carry on from there.
You've seen the tourism industry in Langkawi evolve over so many years. Where is it heading? So, from where it was when the boom years of the Langkawi tourist industry, where is the tourism industry in Langkawi heading to before COVID-19 hit?
Okay. Before COVID-19, we were actually doing really, really well. Okay, I mean,
it was a boom year, wasn't it? 2019.
2019 was our boom year. We did one of the high. We got close to about 3.92 million tourists into the island. And yeah, we were getting there. I mean, the Europeans really got to know about Langkawi. We were starting to fight places like Bali and Phuket. We were getting a better footing. Okay, yeah, we were definitely heading there and trying to develop something different. But unfortunately, the COVID came and everything went down.
The pandemic hit.
Okay, I wonder, Hezri, when people think about pivoting to something new and all that, and it sounds good on paper, right? But it's the pain points would be what? Capital investment, skills and expertise development, right? So yes, a mushroom farm might be great for a hawker, but do they have the skills? That how do you get them there, and so on and so forth? In terms of that kind of strategy, what are you looking at? What do you see as the pain points?
Well, we have to work with people who have the know-how. For instance, with the mushroom project that I mentioned to you, we are working with DXN, the largest producer of Ganoderma in the world now, who happens to be operating from the factory in Jitra.
Jitra and Kedah.
Jitra and Kedah. So we're using people with expertise. And in the case of mushroom, I mean, sometimes we expect farmers to know everything from A to Z. In the case of DXN, they would control the beginning part and also the end part, which is marketing. Beginning would be how to cultivate it well and all that. So they would just they have an SOP, and these people would come and just operate it. So they get that quick cash without worrying about the supply chain. So I think we have to use this model to expedite, particularly in a time like this when we really need quick cash.
Can I
sure.
a little bit? I mean, from the product owner's perspective, okay, I mean, during the pandemic, we saw so many people out of jobs, do not have money. People were literally trying to find money to eat, okay? Because of this, a bunch of us, like product owners in Langkawi, decided that Langkawi actually needed a second economy. So what we're trying to do is, we're trying to get whatever land or whatever agriculture resources we have to actually provide to these people, okay, anything, just so that they can live, so that they do not rely 100% on tourism. Second economy is basically the way to go for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is support from federal agencies like LADA on this second economy. Okay.
We're digging from our own coffer. There is no specific sort of dedicated funding coming from federal government for the time being. We are working towards that. But I think there's enough, I mean, for the kind of thing that we want to do. LADA has its own resources. And then we also have our subsidiaries. For instance, we are also thinking of a farming project. We have land in Langkawi, and we can allocate half an acre for a family. Give an example, the single mom, who happens to be a grandmother with 4 families living with her, the son and daughters and the grandson and all that. So you actually have a full labor force in that household itself, and they can come. We have the expert, who knows how to do, this is organic farming that we are going to explore, and you have the labor built into the system.
I wonder, because this is very interesting, Langkawi was, in fact, its economy was, in fact, paddy plantation, paddy and also fisheries. And now we're kind of going back to that as a kind of safe haven, as it were. I want to ask you, what was it that was in the conversation that made diversification not there part of the plan? Why are we only now thinking about diversifying the economy? Was it the wages? Is it because tourism brings in so much more quickly, and it leverages, of course, on the beauty of Langkawi, 99 islands or whatever it is?
The risk has always been there, but it's hard to get people to to move into that direction when mass tourism was in full swing. Now with the slowdown, I think people are more attentive to what it should be. You cannot, I mean, we were talking before the show, the possibility of some areas in Langkawi exceeding the carrying capacity. So the threats are there, and the risks are there, but it's difficult to convince the masses or the players to come in. But now is the time.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break, and more on this in just a few minutes. Stay tuned to Consider This. Thank you for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation with Hezri Adnan and Hussein Syed about tourism in Malaysia, Langkawi specifically. I want to come back and get you to clarify something very quickly. We had to go to break, but you mentioned that Langkawi was going beyond carrying capacity. Can you explain what that meant?
In some localities, yes. I think in places like Kilim, the mangrove tour is very, very popular among tourists. But when it is popular, so you get more boats coming in, more people coming in, and the ability of that natural ecosystem to absorb the sort of the intervention.
This is the UNESCO Geopark.
We are in UNESCO Global Geopark since 2012. So the Kilim particularly has suffered with the boats, number of boats, and the speed the boats were going. That has actually compromised the ability of that, mangrove system to replenish itself.
Well, was it not possible to regulate that part of the economy, considering the fragility of that economy, ecology?
That's always been the intention, but enforcement was lacking. Okay. So moving forward, we have to have enforcement. We have to learn to work together better. Because, for instance, mangrove comes under the jurisdiction of the Marine Department, So we have to rely on the authority of the Marine Department to enforce the ruling. But they are, they don't have enough manpower to do that in Langkawi, for instance.
Hussein, I mean, you are a business owner, you're jet skis. I don't know what the fish are thinking when you guys fly across the water, but was the ecology of the island something that was foremost in your mind as a business owner, to be honest?
I mean, when I first started doing jet skis, what I wanted to do is take away the jet ski activities away from the beaches. That's why on our tours, we actually help you guys explore the real beauty of Langkawi, and then try teaching them how to appreciate the ecosystem better. So yes, we do not go against that, most definitely.
Hussein sets a very good example in this business. He would go around in these little islands and collect plastic bottles and he gets the guests to do that with him, you know.
Oh, so, clean up the beaches.
Yes,
and
the beaches and also the the smaller islands.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Now that I'm guessing at least in the next couple of years, the era of mass tourism is over. That's going to be wonderful for eco-tourism or a place like Langkawi. But how are you going to kind of incorporate that? I'm probably thinking that your packages, your your tourist strategy will now have to be very, very niche. You're targeting, as you alluded to earlier, a very high-end type of customer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're definitely targeting a different level, but as a whole, Langkawi, if we actually want to survive, we need to actually increase the spending per capita. Okay, if previously, example, the average was 1,000 ringgit per person, maybe we need to increase it to 1,500 or 1,800 ringgit per capita.
And ecotourism is the way to bring in the
most definitely
increased tourist dollars?
Ecotourism, sustainable tourism, this is the way to go. The younger generation, we actually care about unfortunately, we actually care about the planet more than the previous generation, because actually we saw it deteriorating, and fortunately for us, they want to do something about it, and they like sustainable development.
Okay, I love how you put yourself into the younger generation there, Hussein. Very, very stealth move there. Hezri, this is a global conversation now. Development, tourism, and so on and so forth. What are the conversations that you're plugging yourself into or trying to pick up ideas from to help Langkawi and perhaps help other localities in Malaysia that are in a similar bind?
Well, I think one way out is sustainability itself. I think it has to be a centerpiece of our forthcoming strategies into the future. The other thing is, as you know, Tourism 101 is 25% product and 75% storytelling. We don't do enough when it comes to storytelling. So in Langkawi, and I'm sure in other places in Malaysia, we are, because of mass tourism, people just come in for 2 days, 3 nights, and they want to go shopping, they want to go to the popular spot, and that's about it. The real people who get to enjoy the real offerings of these destinations are, the foreign tourists who come in for 1 week and all that. And when they come in for 1 week, they would want to hear more stories about the local attractions, local identity.
How would you storytell to a domestic audience who are probably familiar with the history of Langkawi?
Okay. I think the key word here is experience tourism. Okay, yeah, experience. What we want to do is not sell a product, but let them experience the product. It sounds similar, but it's actually very, very hard to actually do. Therefore, the storytelling plays a really, really vital role inside it.
It's important.
And who are your storytellers, Hezri? I mean, we're talking about government agencies, influencers. Who is the best conduit for that? And should it be centralized, or should it, in fact, like let 1,000 flowers bloom and just let the stories percolate?
Well, we have got the green light from government from last year to initiate the Langkawi Festival. Langkawi Festival will be the platform where we could congregate every year and start to look at the mythology, the folklores, and also the legends of Langkawi, and polish it up to the level where it can be enjoyed by the international fraternity. So the festival is one area which the government provides the platform, but it has to be the private sector players who come in with the fringe events and all that. So that's one. But I think it's also giving voice to the locals themselves, who always wanted to tell their story, their history about the place, but they never got a chance because of mass tourism.
Right.
So this is, I think, a good time to do that now.
Well, Hussein, you said that tourism is really fun. This is a sector you can see yourself staying in, you and many of your colleagues. What support, what help, what resources is needed from federal agencies like LADA to help you survive this period?
Okay, to survive this period. Okay, wow, that sounds really okay. Never mind.
Well, you did say it was not to make money, but to reduce losses.
I think the bottom line is we're just trying to reduce losses. Okay, and within the next 6 months, I see it's going to be a bit more challenging, to tell you the truth.
What support do you need from LADA, for instance?
For LADA,
Is it financial? Is it storytelling support?
I would say, let me think about that. Okay, skills. Okay, I actually need my manpower to have more skills, and if LADA can provide training and get them certified, that would be fantastic. Actually,
yes. There you go, Hezri.
And we are putting a lot of efforts into this now with we have a Langkawi Tourism Academy. And you know, they tend to focus more on the hotel side of things, but we want to diversify it again, you know, so that people can, like Hussein's staff can come and be a part of that and get a certificate after 3 months or so. So we've started a series of programs involving people who've lost their job, and digitalization is an important skill moving forward. Yeah, and of course, you have to be able to sell your products online. So teaching people how to develop products, food and all that. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. We wish you all the best of luck in these difficult times. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching. Good night, folks.